Welcome to the AI Your Business podcast. I'm Kim Fernandez, your host and passionate guide to all things AI for small business owners, coaches, consultants, and service-based entrepreneurs. I'm an AI consultant and launch strategist for online experts, and I love supporting purpose-driven entrepreneurs to elevate their life-first business. When I'm not helping business owners like you design custom AI to wow your clients, improve your operations, marketing or launches, I'm likely out walking by the water, singing in the kitchen, or spoiling a fur baby that I'm minding in my home in beautiful regional New South Wales, Australia. If you're looking to balance AI adoption with a business that's focused on people and connections, whether you're tech savvy or if you're AI curious, this podcast is for you. We'll unpack how to use artificial intelligence in practical, profitable ways, from productivity and marketing to transforming your client results and user experience. We'll dive into real-world examples, expert interviews, and actionable insights to help you level up with AI. We're here to demystify the tech, share proven strategies, real-world stories, and discover practical, creative AI applications for business. So let's dive in. Welcome back to the show, and today we're joined by Donna McGeorge. Just a little introduction and then we'll have a chat. Donna McGeorge is a global authority on productivity, having recently been featured in the Harvard Business Review, Forbes magazine, and Fast Company magazine. More locally in Australia, you'll see Donna as an expert guest on TV as well as in most of our print news. She's an international speaker, best-selling author, and is passionate about helping people have more capacity in her lives. And she's just released her latest book, The ChatGPT Revolution. Get curious, get productive, get creative. Hi, Donna. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Kim. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for joining us. And just before we came on, we were both chatting about our preferred beverage. So we're sitting here today. I like that we're having a conversation, you over your cup of tea, me over my coffee, which is my morning brew. And we're just going to have a chat about your book and also some other elements that are happening in AI and the AI revolution. So before we get to that, Donna, as a productivity expert, could you share with us what's some sort of outdated premise that you think is a common misconception or misbelief when it comes to productivity that you want to throw out?
Do you know, I wish everyone would throw out the notion that working hard is the way to get ahead and that going hard. And so this notion that we have to be 100% on 100% of the time, because there's so many studies now that show when we take our foot off the pedal a little bit and we go, I call it the go slow to go fast model, or the work at about 85% of your capacity model, you actually get way more done. And so if our outcome is to have more done and be more productive, we're better to just take it a little slower and not constantly be on all the time.
Yeah, I love that. And like for me, I've always been passionate about helping people find their core element to make them thrive rather than survive. And so I love what you're talking about and sharing with productivity. So obviously, we could naturally then go into the discovery of AI with productivity. So you've added AI tools to your process. Could you tell us how it felt to use AI in your workflow when you first started with your foundation of great traditional sort of productivity optimizing methods? What about it do you love, and how did it feel to use it first?
Right. So the first time I used it was probably early in 2023. I'd heard about it because ChatGPT had kind of come out and was public available in around November 22. And I thought, oh, look, and everyone kept saying it's going to change productivity forever. And I thought, oh, well, as a global authority in productivity, I better go check this thing out. And so I set some time aside and dived in and just started playing around with the kinds of things that I have to do, which is mostly around writing, because as I'm an author, I write books, writing articles, blogs, social media posts, training outlines, because I also deliver training and facilitation. I was often having to write nurture sequences for email stuff, you know, the 5 emails you get in a row after someone takes your lead generator, and how to create lead generators using. So there was all these things. It's all the written stuff that I would always take me not a long time to do because I am naturally a writer, but they were just time consuming. I would set aside sometimes whole days, a day or two, to do a big chunk of writing, whatever the context was. And I just could not believe the speed and quality I got with very little tweaking to prompts. So back then I didn't really know much about prompts and didn't really know much about how to tweak them, but I immediately saw the gains that could be had around making a start, getting a first crappy draft that, when I write a book, I always think it takes me usually up to 6 months, depending on the book, to do a first crappy draft in its entirety. I know you can get one done in about 3 weeks now.
Yeah,
and
amazing.
So everything was just faster. And the quality was about, I reckon, initially about 50%. I'd have to really work hard to change. Now that I'm better at it, it's about, the stuff's 80% good enough.
And how many books have you released so far, Donna? How many books have you published?
Before we go down the path of have all of these been written by AI, they're not, right? So I've got 15 that I have out in the world. And I always make a joke around when the first 8 or so are rubbish. So don't go getting the complete works of Donna McGeorge. But a couple of those are card sets. A couple of those I'm featured in a Harvard book. So I count that. But I would say up until I wrote the ChatGPT books, I didn't use AI. Wasn't around at all for me to use for writing that, or not that I was aware of it anyway, to write those books.
Yeah. So what I find fascinating is I'm amazed by the amount of output you have, the amount of books you've released as an author. A lot of people have a goal or a dream or a wish of becoming a published author, but actually sitting down and writing that manuscript can be a bit of a process for people. So even before AI came around, it sounds like you had your process totally nailed. So I'm curious now, with this last book that you've released, ChatGPT Revolution, how much has your approach changed? How much has your process changed? And do you think that you'll be using AI to release more books, or how do you see it playing a role in future for authors?
Sure. So just to give you my process, I'm not sure it's changed wildly. But so in the past, when I would write a book, I would do all the research via Google, and I'd say, for example, if I'm writing about when I wrote the 25-minute meeting, I go into Google and I say, give me all the articles anyone's ever written about how much people hate meetings and what do they hate about them. Then I did a little bit of my own research in social media, little surveys and things like that. And then I slowly start pulling what I think my model or framework is to do better meetings. So my process always starts with models. And then from there, I start to flesh out, let's say it's a Venn diagram is the main model. Then each section is one of the Venns. Then I just flesh it all out and away I go. And so what I would do sometimes is I'd take an article and I'd copy a whole piece from the article into my manuscript and then massage, change it, reword it, tweak it so that it fitted my narrative, right? And then delete their bits. So that was just really just from a storage perspective. With ChatGPT, when I started writing with that all that part now is automated. I now go to it and say, go and troll Google or anywhere, go and troll the internet for all the articles written about meetings, for example, and summarize the top 10 things people hate, the number 5 strategies people use. So that research is done for me. And that's incredible in terms of the amount of time, because I've never had an intern that I can just turn to and say, hey, go find me all the articles, research it, summarize it for me, and then give it back to me in a succinct document, which is, I suppose, what very rich authors might have, right? They've got a team of people that can go and do that. I always had to do it myself. Now I have an intern.
I love that term, intern. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I've called it Charlie. So ChatGPT is Charlie. Charlie's my intern. Charlie goes and does all my research. And so that aspect of it's been absolutely. And sometimes I do copy and paste stuff in from ChatGPT, whatever it's produced. But I still do the same process of tweaking and rewriting and changing to make sure it's got my voice, properly got my voice.
Sure. So ChatGPT is not writing your books for you, but it's helping you pull together the information so that you can write faster.
I just have to tell you, though, a lot of people think, when they hear someone's using ChatGPT to write a book, I think they imagine that, I just sit back and file my nails while ChatGPT is writing away. One day when I was working on the ChatGPT book, I'd asked it to do something for me, and it was just taking a while to generate all the stuff. And I literally had a hangnail, and my husband walked down to give me a cup of tea just as I was filing the hangnail, and he goes, "I knew it. You just sit back and file your nails while ChatGPT does all the work." So he did bust me one day actually filing my nails.
Oh, that's funny. That's a fantastic process too. And obviously from a productivity point of view, like I love systems and processes and automation. So for me, like my pet peeve is repeating things if it's possible to touch once. So I love that you sort of nailed down this process of using AI really effectively in releasing and becoming a published author. Now, since ChatGPT came out, you mentioned there's been a bit of a journey and so many, a plethora really, let's face it, of apps and AI tools that have come out and assistants and you name it. And one recently that you were sharing with me that you're loving using is Microsoft's Copilot, which is quite specifically inside the Microsoft 365 environment, isn't it? How do you use it?
Yeah, so first up, you have to pay for it. So it's an extra subscription, of course. Bless them. And so I use it for a couple of things. So one, as a coach, and this is just, I'm coaching Kim, and I just can't remember how many sessions we've had already, even though I kind of have a system for that. But let's just say I can't remember how many meetings we've had, how many sessions we've had. I can go in through Copilot and say, find all the meetings with Kim, and it will just list them all for me, and I can see which one was a coaching session, which one was just something else, for example. So I love that, because that used to, I don't know if anyone else has ever had to try and find stuff. So in terms of a search engine within your system, so for emails, it does the same thing. Find me every email I've ever sent to Kim, or whatever email exchanges we've had, and I can find that much easier than using the little search thing, because I can even then say to it, summarize all the email communications that Kim and I have had about this topic, and it will do that. Right. I love how it can take now a PDF or a Word document and say, now convert this into a PowerPoint deck, and it will do the bulk of the work in creating, I call it like the scaffolding of a presentation. I'd be maybe in the future it might, but right now it doesn't immediately then go, okay, I can now just stand up in front of an audience and delivers directly from what it's done. It always still needs tweaking. I like at the top of Outlook, there's an option to summarize an email chain. So if you and I have gone back and forth over 100 emails, and suddenly I'm trying to remember how much I quoted you in the first place, right? So I can get it. Can you just summarize all these emails, or can you please summarize the whole lot and specifically look for dollars? And so it can tell me it'll say the top line is the first email you quoted Kim this amount of money, and then we went back and forth and negotiated and changed a few things. So it's hard to estimate exactly how much time that has saved me, but I would estimate overall in my life, AI saves me probably about between 25 and 30% of my time. And the reason I know that is I have my weekends back. And I was just reflecting on this after our conversation the other day when we were talking about doing this podcast, that I cannot remember the last time I had to do catch-up work on a weekend. And as a small business owner, and if any of your listeners know this, that's remarkable, right? So I reckon over the last 12 months, I've stopped having to work weekends, because I know I can get stuff done really quickly that used to take me ages, even down to the prep I do for any of my workshops, writing, session plans and facilitation maps and stuff like that.
That's so powerful.
Right?
25 to 30%. That's incredible.
That's a day, which is why I know I've got my weekends back.
And you haven't, in using and adopting AI for your productivity, for your processes in the back end of your business, you haven't necessarily, had, for example, VAs supporting you that you said, I don't need that role, or you've just changed the way that you do things to be able to get your time back and be more effective with the time that you have. Is that right?
I've always had, not VAs, I've always had usually some kind of help in the business. So right from I've been at this for over 20 years now, and I've always had someone in the business. But just over the last it kind of started with COVID. I pulled back a little bit and started to be a bit more self-sufficient. In case anyone's wondering, I fully support the idea of having help in the business, whether it's a business manager or an assistant or a social media helper or something like that. And I, at this point, don't believe AI would 100% replace that. That's just a choice I made a while ago. But what I'm finding is I don't sit there thinking, gee, I wish I had one. Because anytime I have that thought, gee, I wish I had, I go, well, I'll see what Charlie can do for me. So there's lots of other things at this point in time it can't do, which is, and it's coming though, because it's coming via, let me just show you, devices like this, which is the Rabbit R1. Which I haven't got plugged in because it's not yet working like they advertise, just so you know. But it's basically a social media device that could, if you tell it to, you basically, it's like a little Post-it note, about the size of a Post-it note. When I push the button in and speak to it, I could say, can you please find me a restaurant in Sydney at 5 o'clock that has, on Friday, that has a table available at 7 o'clock. My preferred cuisine is... And can you either let me know which ones are available or make an online booking using one table if it's available, or open table if it's available. So there is coming a time where you can do stuff like that, and it could then cancel it if I do. So it's getting closer to having a little AI assistant. But don't all go rushing out and get this. I did it because I talk about AI a bit. But it's not doing anything at the moment. It's no better or worse than having, say, ChatGPT on your phone. So don't worry yet about that. So I do think you still want an assistant, but for all the stuff that I would use an assistant for, put a social media plan together. Give me first drafts of stuff. Go research this for me. Find 10 ways I can do that. Get 10 gift ideas for my sister-in-law, right? That stuff I think is really useful for.
Absolutely agreed. Now, I just want to back up a minute for that little piece of hardware that you were waving around and sharing. So, Rabbit One, it's called
Rabbit R1.
Rabbit R1. So we'll link that up in the show notes. We'll have that so that people can research it. But interesting that you brought up that you use that for researching some really practical things. And we're starting to see hardware being released now, but we're also seeing, as you mentioned, things like the ChatGPT app that you can download on your phone. So for me, I use the ChatGPT app very frequently for ideation, for search. Now you can have the search function inside the ChatGPT app, and I'm finding the more that I talk to people about what they're using and the way that they're using AI instead of things like Google for searching for things, it's becoming more and more heavily adopted from all different age groups. People are using their smartphones in different ways, and they're starting to adopt AI quite quickly. Where do you think the benefit is for something like a little hardware piece?
Look, the little hardware piece, I think the benefit's going to be for people who want to keep their phone as a separate device. So one of the things I hear a lot about the young people these days, the youngsters, and even from, like, it's kind of like the sandwich generations, the bread generation, so the boomers and then your millennials and Zeds, are saying how they're tired of the ubiquitous nature of technology, and that's always available and it's always there. And so we're starting to see people go back to single-use devices. So the pendulum has swung all the way that you have one device to run everything, and now the pendulum is swinging back to single-use devices. And so I think there may be a space for these kinds of devices when I don't want to be contactable, but I want all the benefits of being able to use AI. So all the things like taking a photo of my fridge and saying, you know, what could I make out of this? Now generate a shopping list, and away I go. To be able to scan, which you can still do on your phone. There's apps for this, right? But this is kind of a one-stop shop around this. To be able to scan barcodes and get nutritional information, or, you know, if you're traveling somewhere and you see a statue, like, who the hell is this guy? Take a photo. Hey, who the hell is this guy? Right. And it will give you a little, see a little tour guide kind of stuff. So I think and I'm a big believer in this, with the exception of Outlook, or Office 365, where I'm quite embedded in there. I sometimes think Outlook may not be the best productivity tool for tasks. And so it's about finding the right app to do the right thing. And so I think in the future, we're going to see different hardware that helps us do different things so that we can compartmentalize our lives a little bit more, because convenience isn't the issue anymore, right?
That's right.
Time and space and capacity is a higher issue.
It really is. It's the currency. And I equate the story that you've just shared around the device with my journey when I first bought my first smartwatch. I really thought this is just going to leave me connected all the time. It's going to be buzzing constantly. And I found the opposite was actually the case. I was holding my phone and picking it up less. And I bought one of those hybrid watches where it looks like a normal watch with the hands that go around, but it buzzes at certain, and the hands go to certain times depending on who's calling, and I choose who I really want to hear from, regardless of what's happening. If I want to hear from that person, my watch would buzz. And then the other use for that was obviously counting steps and things like that. So I found instead of being super connected to technology, it helped me switched off, because I just had something that would stop that anxiety that I'm going to miss out on something. I've got all the priorities in one place, and everything else is there for when I need it.
I reckon it could take us 10 years of therapy to get you over the fact that you do need to be contactable, and just in case you might miss out on something. But your experience of the Apple Watch was the same as mine, which is why I don't wear an Apple Watch. But I love, and I don't always want to take my phone when I go for a walk, but I do. The wearable tech, I've got a Aura ring, right? Because I want the steps counted and some of the other health aspects that come with that. But I did find I was unsuccessful at managing the interruptions from the phone. So I literally would be having a conversation with you and my phone would buzz. And of course I'm going to look down at it. It's an instinct, right? It's hard not to look down at it. And so, I found it too intrusive. So, but look, we're still on such an early time around wearable tech. And there's some wearable AI tech that's coming that are like little badges, and I still don't think we've seen the end of the glasses and all of that sort of stuff, but we're still, in the scheme of things, really at the early stages of that.
Yes, I think it's an exciting time. I'm curious to see what else comes out. So we talked about blurring the work-life boundaries, and the new currency is around time and space. So based on the fact that you figured out that you've got your weekends back and that you've saved 25-30% of time, we now have perhaps got to reconsider what we do with our time and downtime. So that's probably the more human element that AI is, sort of that untapped potential is giving us time to be present, to do more, to have more. What are your thoughts on that?
Technology through the ages, if I wanted to go as far back as the creation of the wheel or simple levers, or, these are the things that were meant to make life easier for us, which in turn frees up time, right? So it's much easier to wheel something somewhere than to drag it along the ground. And right to the printing press, through to all the technological stuff we've experienced over the years. And every single one of them came with the promise, and technology has had the promise to give us back time. Email was originally meant to give us back time, but you don't hear people these days saying, God bless you, email, you saved me so much time. It just never happens because we forget. And I would even think AI right now, we're at the risk of even being even more impatient around speed of things. So because AI is quite fast, that now we're even more impatient about getting responses, and we expect even more speed around that. And so I think it's a big opportunity, and I think the introduction of 4-day work weeks or reduced working hours in a week, I think this is the big chance to do that, because AI could save us a whole day if we use it effectively, which means we get a day off, not 8 hours extra to fill with stuff. And so I think I believe we're fast heading to a 3-day weekend in whatever form that looks like. And my thing is always, an article used to take me, I used to set aside 2 hours to write an article. Now it takes me, I won't say 10 minutes. It's probably 15 to 20 minutes to massage it once I generate it out of AI and get it to the point where I can write it. So what do I do with that other hour and a half? Now I'm going to tell you, initially, it's get my weekends back. And so for those of you that feel like you're overwhelmed, got lots on, you're really busy, that's the measure I'd be looking at, is how much of your weekend are you getting back in the short term, because that's what you should be aiming for. I get most of the stuff done during working hours. So I then get either whatever it is for you, my evenings back. I get to have a day off once a week to, I don't know, play golf, go sailing, get in the garden, muck around with the kids, whatever it is. I would encourage you, if I was coaching you, to put a measure in place that, once I've got that, I'll know I've really been nailing the productivity through AI or any other system that I'm putting in place.
And I guess the danger with that, Donna, is not consciously making decisions about what to do with that extra time. Just like with email, as you mentioned, enhancing our productivity. I know when I was in a corporate role, I would easily pump out 400 emails a day. Like the volume just increased. As you said, it's not about, oh, thank you for giving my time back. It's here's more and more. And it gets to the point where emails and meetings, and do we really need to hold that meeting? Do we really need to send that email? What is a more effective way of doing this, instead of having a volume of content that everybody needs to consume and digest and act on? And then add to that the continuous scroll and the touchscreen nature of what's available to us and the convenience with tech today. So I'm just interested and curious about how people are going to get to that next stage when they have that time back. What are some things that you could suggest to keep that front of mind, to be really conscious about what you're doing with your time?
We're all going to have to get more comfortable. If we really want to make the change, we'll have to get more comfortable with boredom. So boredom is something that's usually a trigger to go do something. And many of us are a little addicted to activity. And so what happens is we wake up on a Saturday morning, our brain goes, we've got nothing to do today. It's a natural flow of thoughts that go, by 10 o'clock, I'm bored. And so I go seeking something to do. And it's usually, if we run our own business, it's usually something work related. And so the first thing we got to do is maybe have something else that we do when we're feeling bored. So it's pick up a book. So most of us have a pile of books this big, at least this big, of books that we've got to play catch-ups on. So it's find a spot, read a book. So that's what in the habit world, we talk about substitution. So when I'm in the habit of picking up my phone and checking a device for something, instead I pick up a book. But really what we've got to do is reframe boredom. It's actually not boredom, it's actually space, and we're not accustomed to having it. And so we try to fill it with things. So the first thing we're going to have to do is just get comfortable with, I don't have a lot on. It's taken me a while to get there. In fact, I spent a bit of time thinking that maybe I'm not as successful as I used to be. Right? I would say to my hubby, oh, business has been slow this year. And he'd say, how do you know? And I'd say, oh, well, I just haven't been as busy as I had to reframe what success looked like in my business as well, because success was for me, and I have reframed it, it's days down, dollars same, or dollars up. And so can I continue earning the same amount of money that I want to earn working less days? It's a game I play now. How many days do I have to work to get the income that I want? And it's certainly not weekends. But it is around consciously deciding that that's my measure. So I'll know I'm using systems tools productively, whether that's AI or anything else effectively, because this is happening. And then now that I have this time available, what could I use it for? I know if I don't have a really, like, at least one day fully off where I'm just sitting around reading books and musing, I journal a bit, that sort of stuff. I know that I'm recharging my battery to go hard the next week. Right. So I still work hard. I still do. Hard's not the right word, but I still, I do the things I need to do to run a successful practice. But I don't have to do it on a Sunday, because I know if I don't recharge my batteries, I'm not going to be able to do what I need to do when I do hit the ground.
Absolutely. I love that. And I love that people are going to have to be a little more conscious around that, the dopamine addiction and the meaning around what your time is, and the space for me. Like for me, having space means creativity. It means allowing time for inspiration and downloads from the universe that will not necessarily happen if you are completely chockers. And those moments of inspiration could be truly transformative for people in their business, but because of, as you say, we've prioritized busyness. We really need to, I think, I'm getting on my high horse now, really need to review what we've been taught and what's been modeled to us from the industrial age workforce.
Right. And you've really, for me, hit the nail on the head around what we prioritize, what we think about, what we need to relearn, why we're even doing it.
There's a lot in it. Yes. I feel like you and I could nerd out on this for about 3 days straight.
This is it, right? So because I have capacity, so one of the books I wrote about, it's called The One Day Refund. It's the purple one right here behind me. And it's the one that talks about adaptive capacity, which is building in at least 15% of time in your life where you don't have anything booked, where you don't have any obligation. And what it does is it creates space in my world for conversations with someone like you, Kim, where if my life was packed out and booked and really busy and you reach out to me and say, hey, I'd love you to be on my podcast, some people would be proud of the fact that they'd say, oh, I'm sorry, you need to book me at least 6 months in advance. I'm like, no, I have space and capacity in my world for cool conversations. And so it's not just sitting and, allowing downloads of this is useful, downloads from the universe, inspiration, ideas. It's also space for conversation, that you're not feeling like, well, I can't have this conversation for any longer because pretty soon I have to be somewhere else. Or someone reaches out and says, let's just have a yak. And you're like, I don't have time for Kim today. Like, you've got to have space, because this is where the juice is, in the connections we make and the inspiration we get even from each other, right?
Absolutely. Yes. And that's something that we didn't talk about before. That's a brilliant point that you've made. Like, for me, part of me putting space in is having time for physically driving somewhere and having a coffee with a business bud who I haven't spoken to in 6 months or a year. And we always say we should do this more often. And I'm sure every single business owner and, anyone who works from home is probably the same. We should do this more often. But how often do we actually prioritize it or reflect to think, I haven't made this a practice lately? And when you have space to do that, the way it impacts your life, your relationships, but your business as well.
But even space for my hubby, right? He loves that I have my weekends back. We've been married 33 years. He loves that I have the weekends back. He loves it. This Friday, I'm taking Friday morning off, and it's in the diary as shopping with Steve. So, well, Steech, actually, it's his nickname, shopping with Steech. And he looked at, because he has access to my diary, so he looked at that and he went, oh, that makes me so happy. So so this is kind of full circle back to the intent of our conversation today around, so AI's role in enhancing productivity. We would argue it's AI's role in creating space and capacity, right? Yes. That's really what I'm most interested in, is how do we use it to give us more and more space, get done what we need to get done to get paid, and then have all this space to do all the things that are really the most important aspects, the things that fill us with joy and nourish our soul.
Beautiful. Donna, you have a lot to say on this topic. Where can people find you to continue the conversation?
Look, the best thing is donnamcgeorge.com. I'm on all socials. I'm a shameless self-promoter. I know the show notes will have all the links in there, but probably I'm most active on LinkedIn. And of course, if anyone wants to reach out, you can do that via LinkedIn or via my website. Happy to have a yak. I've got a lot to say about everything, not just about this.
I love it. And we love what you've got to say. So thanks for joining us, Donna. And we'll see you again.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the AI Your Business podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review. Your feedback means the world and helps other business owners discover the power of AI. If you have real-world experiences to share about your results with AI, I'd love to hear from you. Head over to the guest application form on the website. While you're there, check out the show notes, extra resources, and more ways to connect. Let's keep it simple, stay curious, and make AI work for you. Until next time.